Well, let me welcome all of you to Chat with Matt. I don't know how many episodes we've had, but probably done at least a dozen. This afternoon's guest is Johnathan Flaks, a very old friend of mine, although he's extremely young. He is an old friend. He's spoken at our meeting in Connecticut, and we're going to be talking about leadership and planning in the new era. Chat with Matt, I try to find speakers who have something interesting to say. And I'm sure you'll find Johnathan to be an engaging individual. And I've actually sent some assignments his way that one of which was in, what was it, North Dakota or South Dakota? There was someplace remote, and Johnathan got high marks. So we're going to get started here. I would point out to you that if your name is not on your screen, if you just hold your cursor over it, you can change it to your actual name. And we're going to be making use of the chat box if you have questions. My wife Peggy is a co-host, and she's going to be monitoring the chat box for us. So without any further ado, I'm going to allow Johnathan to properly introduce himself. My experience has been that when people introduce me, they butcher it up. So Johnathan, why don't you start by telling a little bit about who you are? Go ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Matt. Appreciate you welcoming me. I have been for 21 years an executive leadership coach, leadership trainer, and career catalyst. Half of my work is working with people in career transition. That's how we came to meet through ACG and have me come as a guest speaker at the FANG and helping financial executives making career changes. And the other half of my career is leadership coaching, individual coaching, and strategic planning. And we're focusing on the strategic planning process where an executive team will come together and look at what the business has been through, what the current condition of the business. My model is to ask people, what do they want to get out of the business and how they want the business to serve their lives, not only have their lives serve the business. I'm one of the first coaches in the world of executive coaching to have earned the Master Certified Coach credential. And I renewed that twice. Some people find it's easier to learn how to fly a plane and keep that certification. It's very subjective. I'm very proud of having accomplished that, and really mostly focused on my clients' successes and having done some strategic planning and leadership coaching, seeing how they then go back into the trenches, back to work, and produce some extraordinary results. So that's really what matters, is people who produce great results in their business financially, and financial executives know that those numbers tell the story, but also have personal fulfillment and balance in their lives.
Sure. So with COVID-19, if there's any time business has been disrupted more, it hasn't been in my lifetime. These are unusual times, and I think every business is challenged in more ways than they can count. And now everybody's working remotely. We have that layered in on top. A lot of people are working remotely. So why don't you start? What is this planning all about? Let's begin there. The key elements.
Well, the way I say it, having some musical songwriting in my background, has a little bit of rhyme to it. If a business is run by a woman or man, it's going to be bottlenecked by that woman or man. And that's difficult for the business and the woman and man. But if a business is run to a strategic plan, then everyone knows the criteria to make decisions, and a business can, by virtue of empowering more leaders to make decisions and take the ball and run with it, then a business can really scale. And that is what most businesses want, is to grow. And you can't grow if you don't have real clear criteria. So a strategic plan is really about identifying.
I would very much agree with you, Jonathan. I have found that it almost doesn't matter what the end plan is written out and so forth. It's that everybody went through the mechanics of it and understands all the levers. Everybody ends up with a better appreciation for how to grow the business. I hadn't really thought about that till you just mentioned it.
Yeah, and even if the plan changes or say that again, please.
I said, even if the plan, even if conditions change, you know the plan and you know how to react.
Yeah.
So that works. So,
yeah, I'm gonna take the point of view that most everyone here has heard some of some of what we're talking about regarding strategic planning.
Oh,
Most
sure.
of you have probably heard, as soon as the plan is written, it's already outdated. But the process of planning, the process of having a plan to go to adjust, to revisit for every year or two, but clear criteria on who's doing what do we want the goals to be specifically, how aggressive do we want to be in terms of revenue, profit, expenses, controls, how are we going to work in terms of culture and teamwork and hours and everything, and how are we going to see how we work together in the planning process, which really is a big factor in what produces some of the extraordinary performance, is people learn a lot about how to relate to each other. And in fact, we really put some of the communication skills. When I do strategic planning, I also include some personality assessments, thinking style assessments, and communication skills training to be part of that process, so they take that and run with it as well.
Yeah, I very much agree with you that out of the planning process, people in the management team learn a lot about each other.
Yeah.
One of the beautiful
Yeah,
outcomes.
that's really,
and perhaps even a greater appreciation for each other out of the planning process.
yeah, that's a big goal and a really deep commitment I have, especially that, let's say, for example, financial and control-oriented people have very structured cost controlling and risk aversion, having to relate to inventors and CEOs and salespeople who are much more, they love a challenge, they love to take risks, and they sometimes misunderstand each other rather than learn and support each other. The numbers tell the story, and the risks, knowing the risks, are good to help growth-oriented individuals avoid problems and grow faster. Yeah. And if you're only running a business to avoid risk, you won't grow at all. Yeah. So these two tensions pull to grow a business.
I worked for a CEO who was in the advertising business, who he was all over the place. So one of the things I read after I worked for him was that a great CEO, generally speaking, has a poorly developed sense of fear.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. That allows for courage and boldness and, out of the box thinking and innovation.
Sure.
So all different personality types contribute something, but could get misunderstood until people recognize those gifts as gifts, not just differences. So
right.
That's
so why don't you start with the first four parts that we've discussed: the vision, mission, and strategy and tactics, and kind of draw some distinctions for us.
So yeah, if we begin with the end in mind, we want a team to end up with a document that describes this vision, mission, strategy, and tactics. So let's define those a little bit, even though everyone here has heard those terms. I guess the point of revisiting this and taking the case that the FANG audience, so everyone here is or might be a financial executive, being able to bring this kind of thinking and or collaborate with someone like me to a business to get this kind of conversation going.
Yes, exactly.
The vision is what the business is going to look like, let's say 5 years from now.
Okay.
And when I'm facilitating a strategic planning, I have us end up on the third day building a 5x5 matrix or a 5x6 matrix, where across the top are the years, the next 5 years, and down the row are 5 or 6 measures. It could be revenue and profit. Usually it's included. Could be number of ideal clients. Could be number of patents, pieces of equipment, but very specific, measurable things that will define, did we fulfill the vision? Does it look the way we want it to look like? And once we identify what it will look like 5 years from now, we then go backwards. This is after we've done a lot of pre-work. What does year 4 have to look like to make sure year 5 is inevitable? How do we know we're on track? And then we look at year 3, the way I do it, and I invite you to look at it that way. Reverse engineering. What would it take to make year 4 inevitable? Inevitable. Like, what would really make sure we're on track? Yeah. And as you keep working backwards, and you'll hear more about the pre-work, and people are working together to understand different roles, different resources, trajectories, financing, divesting, investing, mergers and acquisitions, all of the ideas of how to bring a business to fruition get put on the table and can be followed or adjusted in future years. And that clarity really helps a business perform. Mission is about, well, who are we as a business? So people do things, and people also have ways about them. So I'm known to be enthusiastic and fun and very caring. Other people more aggressive and structured. Like, what's the culture look like in terms of core values and personality?
Mhm.
And that can get gathered as a collection of key core values, such that the breadth of personality types, but cohesion can be described, and human resources and interviewing when hiring can make sure the right players are on the right team and understand sort of the human nature of the company as a human being. A company is a collecting of people. It's a human being in its own right. Then once we have the vision,
It is
and
amazing
mission,
how companies have a personality.
they all do. They all do.
Yeah.
And much of it is either by default driven by the loudest and or the CEO or some combination. Sometimes it is the CEO is the loudest presenter or personality type, and then their flaws and strengths become the culture. But if you gather people to input, you get more breadth and depth. It becomes more inclusive, more collaborative. There's more harmony. And again, high performance is the point. High performance and success and happiness and balance. Then what's the strategy? What are the broad strokes of approaches we'll take as a company to fulfill on that vision and live that mission?
Mhm.
And from the strategy, we break it down into tactics, and usually just looking at the first year, who's going to do what by when? Who's going to be responsible for what by when? And people leave this 3-day event with really clear marching orders and immediately start making changes, cleaning up. We talk about stop, start, and continue. What are some of the practices and habits we want to stop doing? What do we want to start doing? And what's working that we want to continue? It's very simple concept.
When I was in the advertising business, I was 9 months in and we had a crisis. We lost one of our large accounts. And it took me a good week, being Henry Kissinger, going to the remaining partners and trying to get them to go away for a strategic planning meeting, where we basically laid out what we did for the next 9 years. It was a pretty amazing process. And one of the things on the start-stop, I made sure that they understood we were not taking any loss accounts anymore. Loss accounts are a big thing in the advertising business. We want to get into a category, so you take something at a loss. I said, well, we're not doing that anymore. Oh, okay. And we didn't. And that's why we became very profitable very quickly. It was a key factor. So why don't we move along to what you feel makes the process work?
So the process, so I share with you sort of the end, reverse engineering and walking and talking exactly. So what is the pre-work involved is having people really do some homework and some research, talking to customers, looking at trade information, and coming to the first meeting really prepared to take a hard look at what the current state of the business is. What do the finances look like? What does the balance sheet look like? What does the P&L look like? What does the market look like? What are the trends in the market? What are competitors doing? What do customers say they love? What do customers say they hate? What is our marketing process, sales process? It's amazing how much value people get from stopping all the work in the business. I know some of this stuff I'm saying is cliche, but when you get reminded of how valuable it is, I hope that some of you will take away carving out time, bring some of your clients, or perhaps offering this up to potential employers to do this as a consultant or do this as part of your 90-day plan. And I'd be happy to support you in this.
Yeah, I think now more than ever,
learned and even get.
I think now more than ever, it's very important to find out what the current state is, because basically almost nobody really knows.
So when you take a combination of, as I said, doing some personality assessments and communication skills training, and you start to look at what's going on in the business, and people learn things they didn't even realize that were right under their nose that were happening, and you see how the numbers in the market, the trends, and the snapshot of what's and some of that foundation for where we're going to go next. They really love having that time with each other, even if there's conflict, because some of the conflicts gets resolved, some short-term initiatives and solutions just get brainstormed. So it's extremely productive, even from a short-term tactical standpoint on day one. And then, as I said, most people skip this part, but we ask the people, what do you want most to contribute to the business? Not only what's your title, but who are you and what do you most want to contribute beyond your role? what do you most want to accomplish? What do you want the business to accomplish? And what do you want to accomplish in your career? What do you want to get out of the business? We want to understand who might have been on the fence about retiring and who wants to grow the thing 30%. And how can those two seemingly opposing personal needs get supported if they're understood in advance? They're there in the background anyway. So getting them on the table can be extremely valuable, even if uncomfortable at first. So, and then I also ask very much, what do you want to get out of the strategic planning exercise? And get everyone on the same page. So some of those questions and conversations take up the whole first day, sometimes a day and a half on a 3-day event. But it's kind of like if you're going to paint a room and you spend a lot of time taping, you do all that prep work, then the paint job goes faster and you get a better quality result.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of surprises that develop. I'm sure the management team itself is surprised with the result. Normally.
Yeah, even the ones who are most enthusiastic have to sort of convince the others, that I might be less enthusiastic about taking time out of the business. Even they find it exceeds their expectations.
Yeah, they learn a lot from the process about each other. They learn a lot about the business, actually. Things they didn't quite understand.
Yes.
One of the things I always say,
in addition for doing this for
I make financial issues understandable to non-financial people. Most people on my side of the street, they get into much too much detail. They get into things that the people they're talking to actually don't control. Like in the advertising business, understanding what people actually control is important. They don't control rent. They don't control employee benefits. Putting that into any equation that they're looking at is a waste of time because they don't control it.
Yeah.
They do control the number of people on accounts and how many days a month they're spending on it and the kind of money they feel they can extract from a client on the business that they're working on.
In the day-to-day conversations about running a business, it's hard for people of opposite thinking styles to have the patience for that.
Yes.
But when people take away 3 days to do a deep look and a strategic plan, and the context is that everyone will get heard, and I'll tell you, it makes room for all of that. And on any given day, I'm following my plan for the planning process, and also I've structured it so there's time for tangents. And people say, are we off track? I'm like, no, we're on one of the tangents I expect you all to get into, so you can really hear each other out and learn what the other's thinking. And there's room for that. It's very refreshing.
Yeah. So now that we're into the world of Zoom, all this is slightly more complicated.
Yes, it is. And so the disadvantages and advantages. So all the, at first in March and April, all of the, in-person strategic planning outings were canceled or put on hold and rescheduled. And now it's, I'm starting to see opening up conversations where, especially in states where people are returning to work, where we can establish a 30-person conference room. We could get 8 people in there, keep a distance, wear masks, and actually hold an in-person meeting. But without an in-person meeting, we do it on Zoom. Now, there's costs and benefits to doing things on Zoom. Certainly you get face-to-face, right? You're looking at me, but I'm not looking at any of you right now. I'm looking at a dot on a camera. If I'm looking at your eyes, it doesn't look like I'm looking at you. So can't create that eye contact that builds rapport. And there's neuroscience that really builds self-esteem and connection. So there's a disconnect emotionally. And there's nothing like being in the room with the people you're working with to build trust, to build understanding, especially something you expect that'll be patient and be about listening and understanding each other. So some of that gets lost in translation for sure.
Yeah, but we're going to have to learn to cope with that, are we not?
What's that?
We're going to have to learn to cope with that.
And it looks like how many people we have here today?
We have 34.
We have 34 people here coping with that. Now, I'll mention something on how to cope with that, and then we'll go to some of the advantages of strategic planning on Zoom. And I could go on and on, but I think at that point, we'll just move on to Q&A.
Sure.
What's very important as we're moving to Zoom, in not only strategic planning, but all meetings moving to Zoom, is taking breaks. If you find yourself on an hour-long Zoom meeting, just like Simka's doing right now, move your body, stretch out, put your arms behind your head, stand up, say, listen, everybody, we're going to stand up for a minute. I know we've only been here 15 minutes, but, you got to just move your body, get the blood flow. Because the brain really requires oxygen and glucose to function well. And when you're sitting still, it chokes off that flow. And people doing night, I think it was you who said, Matt, your day goes from 9 to 9:30, and unfortunately that's not a half hour.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you could really end up very fatigued, very stressed, shoulder problems, health problems. So be a leader in the era of Zoom, folks. And when you're on a long Zoom, say, listen, everyone, let's just take a minute to stretch out,
Right.
Take a stretch break, and you'll be thanked. So
Back in the 1970s when I was with CBS, the TV was called the unblinking eye. Right. So now that we're on Zoom, my wife has pointed out to me, she's a communications expert, as you know, that you have to work very hard on Zoom because you don't know who's watching you to have a pleasant face.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're always leading.
That because if you're drinking coffee, you're multitasking, people can see that. So you have to be so careful because you don't know who's watching you. In a meeting, you can maybe you can drift off a bit because everybody's eyes are probably on the speaker. But on Zoom, you just don't know who's watching you. And watching what you're doing and checking out your background, you just don't know. Yeah. Plus, being able to see your own, I find being able to see your own face is very distracting. You can't do that at a live meeting.
It's completely different. And, like Peggy, I'm in communication skills work, but it even took me a long time to get used to this idea of looking at the camera and then from time to time looking at faces. But you're always leading. When you're leading, you're making good television. And if you've never done that before, it takes practice. It takes good lighting. I've got a ring light here. This is a $30 or $40 item that everyone should own. It's really useful to take a room that otherwise is terrible lighting. Does that matter so much? It really can when you're leading, and you're always leading.
You look very pasty.
When you're interviewing, when you're on just a one-to-one conversation.
Yeah.
You never know when you're going to want someone to buy into your ideas or be inspired by you and recommend you to someone. So I encourage you all to take that away from this. But let's go back to one other thing on the strategic planning side. When we're doing strategic planning meetings, there's whiteboards and there's sheets of paper so to capture some of the ideas, and then they get taken and they get spread out on the room, and then they're left there. And people can look at them. Yeah. On Zoom, we can set up a Google Doc, a shared document that as ideas are coming, we're putting up there. We might put different colors. We could do things with fonts. We could copy and paste pictures from websites or from reports. So there's a whole lot more color we can add and dimension we can add to the documents we're capturing in the discussion, rather than just someone's handwriting really quickly with a marker. And any participant can go on, every participant's given access to commenting rights. So without interrupting the flow of the meeting, if a thought comes up and they want to post it, it's like sticking a Post-it note, on one of these sheets. They can type in a comment and a bubble shows up and it sits there, and they can come back to it later. It gets documented. So there's a very interesting advantage becomes available in capturing ideas and letting people contribute.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about the Google Docs aspect. I myself, I've had Zoom meetings with people. And I have an iPad as well, so you can use. Peggy's explained to me you can use both. You can be on a Zoom call, and you can be doing something on your iPad. I've had networking meetings with ACG, for example, where they set up rooms. So now you see everybody's name, and I have two monitors, fortunately. So I look people up that I'm talking to, and now I can see how I know them, what I know about them, and it's very powerful. And I think that fits right into what you're saying about the Google Docs aspect. If you're sharing things on Google Docs, people are in their home offices. They could even print the document while they're in the meeting, something you couldn't otherwise do. Yeah. On the fly, right? You just put something. And
some of that will carry forward. We'll be able to borrow from that in innovation when we get back to doing them in person.
Yeah. Well, that glorious day. So let's have some questions. Otherwise, Johnathan and I are going to keep talking. Peggy?
I'll take question.
Can I add something, Jonathan? My
course.
question is, you're talking about going back to, hopefully at some point, in-person meetings. My concern is initially when that happens, there's still going to be, you talked about social distancing, only so people in a room, and wearing masks. You think that it's difficult to understand what people are thinking and the nonverbal on Zoom. Tell me about it when you're wearing a mask and I can only see this and I can't understand you because I read your mouth. Make a comment about that. I think that Zoom is probably better than in-person meetings where everybody's
People are wearing masks.
Yeah. Listen, I'm not sure if it's a question or a comment. As a comment, I agree. There's going to be some trade-offs.
Right. So what we're asking is, when you're the facilitator in the room, and I know you're actively reading people's faces. Are you not? So
Yes.
have you done a meeting with people wearing masks?
I have not.
Okay.
I
I want you to report to me after you do, because I think it's going to be hard.
You know, I do so much of my individual coaching by phone. I like to see I can see a lot of emotion in people's eyes. I can see body movement and hearing. So there's a lot of clues to pick up. And it's funny though, Peggy, I am just like you in terms of sometimes I'll be looking at someone and I'm watching their lips. It helps me hear better. And without that, it's harder for me to hear. Some of that comes from being a rock and roll musician and losing some hearing. But,
no, it doesn't. That's why they charge you so much to go to the theater, because if you can see, we all hear better when we can see what someone is saying. It's a fact. And I mean, I'm coming from the world of speech pathology. I can tell you it's a fact. It's not because of being a musician. And so, and when you put a barrier in front of the audible sound, you muffle the sound. So if somebody isn't speaking slowly, clearly, if there's a language barrier or an accent, you are going to lose even more, I think, than you lose from a Zoom. And I guess on Zoom, our idea is that we have to practice being able to look in the camera and then kind of look at you and look back in the camera. That takes practice. It's not an automatic.
That's absolutely true. From the standpoint of your question and or comment, there's going to be some additional practices, learning to use other senses. You know, they say if you lose one sense, if you get blind, you start to hear better. We're going to have to keep looking and adjusting on how we use the stimulus and sensory input that we get. But I'll say one other thing, Peggy, on this, and that is for better or worse, I'm not afraid to say, could you please repeat that? I didn't get it. Or even today, I said, you know, I got distracted by something and I didn't listen. I'm a good listener, but only when I'm listening. Could you please repeat what you said? Because I got distracted. And being honest about it, I tend to tap into something that everyone experiences. Our listening is never 100%. We get distracted. So it's important not to fake it that we've been listening and to just ask the person to repeat themselves.
I think another product advantage, if you will, of this whole Zoom planning is that you could actually you could record all the meetings and people can play it back. If they miss certain parts, they want a rerun, they don't have to rely on somebody's memory. They can actually play the meeting back.
Yeah.
Have you done any meetings like that where people have taken advantage of the new technology?
Yes, I've run a couple of career transition group trainings for people, you know, making a change, and we record those groups. We keep them confidential, but they get access to the replay. And I've often heard from them that they've gotten added value from watching the replay.
Yeah,
I know myself. I don't typically make the time for that.
We're sort of in the. I think we're in a situation where we're in this Zoom thing for the long term. The long term being anything over 6 months.
Yeah.
We're already 6 months into it, and we're at least 9 months away from being able to have in-person meetings. I belong to organizations that have canceled meetings out through next September. That's a long time in terms of a business, is it not?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
we're going to have to adapt.
We are. I'm happy to continue on this or take other questions. I know it's 4:30. I do not have a hard stop, but I want to,
Good,
respect the chat with Matt Model and see if other people have questions.
Sure. One of the questions we have here is it's very difficult to look at the dot/camera. Also makes it hard to read body language on the other side of the camera. How do you overcome that?
We have to just be more nuanced and watch for subtle body changes, nod of the head, someone looking off to the side, watching what someone's baseline is. I was leading a team building, the beginnings of a strategic planning for a startup that I've just been engaged with. And the CEO's highly ADD. His camera was like, he was mostly like this. He was mostly looking over here, and that's his baseline. So I had to see that this is his usual paying attention mode. And I actually trained him to move the camera and remember these. He's always leading. And in our second meeting, he was more attentive like this.
Yeah, I think you have to do a little training, right? At the beginning of a strategic, you have to train people on Zoom. Here's the new tool. This is what you should do. Get yourself a light, goddammit. I can't see your face. Come on.
Yeah.
And if I can't see your face, I can't read your reactions. In my business,
it's an ongoing adjustment.
You know, I have a search practice, and over the 20 years I've been doing this, I almost never met my clients. So I did it all over the phone. So now I've had this pleasure of actually Zooming with people. In fact, I'm doing more Zoom meetings than I am telephone. And I find it hugely satisfying and more enlightening because I can see people's faces.
Yeah. Yeah. So another thing I'll say to that question is just ask people, hey, I see that you're been sitting rather still, or I see you moving about a bit. What's your take on this? Or what's your feeling about this? Or where do you think, do you have any questions on the back of your mind that you could formulate to help us move this conversation forward? So being, practice asking questions and having people verbalize what otherwise might get picked up in nonverbal communication. You may have to be leading and drawing it out.
Yeah. There's a question about laptops with the camera in the middle of the screen. What I would tell everybody is most of the laptops, the camera is at the bottom of the screen, which gives you an odd angle.
Yeah,
you can put, I got my wife a camera that fits on top of her screen, and that's about as close as you're going to get to the center of the screen. And from the top, I think it looks a little bit more normal.
And then I see some people that take a distance shot so that it's a little harder to see that their eyes are wandering. So it looks like I'm looking at you regardless.
Of course, it varies all over a lot. We had a guest speaker this morning on a Zoom call, and he was sitting here. You know, he was way into the screen.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And he was the speaker.
That's not good television.
With a normal balance, I think. And it's
Maybe
very important.
But if you're too far back, then you look like this dot. You can't read their faces. And if you think about it, to build relationships, you kind of have to lean in and be connected. If I'm sitting way back, I look like it's that nonverbal language of sitting with my arms crossed. I've disconnected myself. So when people are sitting back too far, I feel that they're really not connected. They're not leaning in, and that's not good either.
I literally saw an example of that. I just told you about the CEO who was really into it, moving around, and we got him at least to be centered. Everyone else who's fully engaged on the team was really kind of centered and focused. And every chain has a weakest link. And the CEO and the chief revenue officer was telling me about one of the partners who they have some concerns about. And that person who was the weakest link was way back here, seemingly very disconnected, sort of making frowny faces. Very interesting.
Yeah. So there's a lot of challenges with the new technology. I would share with everyone that the adoption of Zoom has been so much faster than the adoption of email. In 1996, when I took over the networking group, out of 20 people in the room, only 3 of them had an email account. By our third meeting, everyone in the room had an email account, but adoption of email went over a period of several years.
Right.
Everyone finally had an email account where you could write to them. Zoom,
Well-
it happened like in the first month. Everybody got
Well,
really into Zoom.
we don't want to forget predecessors of Skype, GoToMeeting, Citrix.
Right,
There's already
Skype was
been
not
some
the same
momentum
thing.
because-
It's nowhere near as useful.
Yeah,
Right.
Zoom came and made this really convenient.
A
They
really
did it
convenient time.
very scalable.
And I want to add that, and it concerns me, and I just took this little survey. We had 30-some people on at one point, and the three of us, you and I, Matt, myself, and Jonathan, are three people with our cameras on. Of all the other people, of the 30-some people on the call, only 9 people turned on their cameras.
Maybe that's a new
To
thing.
me, if you're on a call, and in this case, it's to hear an expert speak, Jonathan, and he's got great things to say. Jonathan wants to connect with you. He could see some of you. That's important. And you want to see think about it, networking. Then you could say, oh, Bob, I saw you were on Chat with Matt. What did you think? You've opened up a way to connect with others. If all you've got is a name, you also are sending a message that you're disconnected because you may be pretending to listen, but you're multitasking. And I recommend if you're on a call, you're on a Zoom call, be on a Zoom call.
Yeah,
What do you think, Jonathan?
Jonathan,
absolutely. And I'll add, take a look at, is it Simha? Thumbs up, Simha. Nice job on the background. He's got a customized background with his name, a little bit about what he does in the logo. I would love to chat with you. Please, let's arrange a conversation. And any of you that would like to have any conversation about anything you're dealing with, anything that's important to you, you'd like to collaborate and bring a strategic planning program to a company, or you know someone that's out of work and wants to do something a little bit different in terms of their resume and their strategy. I've got various different things, and I've got a big heart. So I've lowered my rates during COVID to make sure people who are worrying about the next paycheck are really well taken care of.
so anything
That's
we
the only
missed
pitch.
before we
Johnathan
wrap up
at
here,
JFCoach.com.
people are starting to drop off the call, Jonathan. So anything we missed? Any final comments?
Just COVID may get worse before it gets better. So you think September is long? Really, the more likely it's going to take till 2021, somewhere where there's a vaccine, where this will finally get us back to any kind of normal. Some of the changes that companies can take advantage of will be, for the long term, better. And there's always the opportunity to take problems and turn them into opportunities. The big mistake to make is look at this problem as a problem. Sure, there's setbacks or there's costs. Sadly, and I have empathy for it, people have lost lives. It's terrible. All right, now what? What do? We want to take this, see what we can learn from it, and bring insights and innovation to our future.
Thank you. I'm going to take over the video now. Jonathan, thank you so much. This has been a great chat with Matt. Our next chat with Matt is August 4th. I don't remember offhand what the day is, but we're going to have it at 10 o'clock in the morning, New York City time. I call it Voices from the Far Ends of the Earth. We have one of our members is in Singapore. We're going to have a panel of 3 people. The second person is in Muscat, Oman, and the third person is in Nairobi, Kenya. And we're going to talk about their perceptions of the world and our world and where they see things going. We're going to have a great conversation with them. So I hope you'll join us on another chat with Matt. I'm going to end the meeting now, and I thank all of you for sticking with us and joining us for Chat with Matt. Jonathan, thank you so much. It was a great session. Take care.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, everyone, for being here. Cameras on or off. Appreciate your time.